If there's anything you're stuck on, put your hand up. We'll get him to translate. So yeah, if you don't really know my music, it's mostly big banging electro house. So I guess the tips that I'm gonna say are useful for like bass music, electro house, loud music in general. You know, that's kind of what I do. I've basically, in preparing for this, I went through and just picked out like some 3 tips for each of the things I want to talk about. So I'm going to give you 3 tips for better kick drums, 3 tips for better snare drums, bass, and then go through like that, rather than just go through one of my tracks, because that could be a bit boring. So I'm going to talk a lot first about kick drums, because this is like the most important thing in your mix. Like if you send me a track and I put it on and the kick drum is shit, then I'm not going to play it in the club. So so yeah, let's look at what I think like makes a fat kick drum, and let's just pick out. This is one of my tracks, Invader. This one I think has a fat kick drum. And just in the drop. Fire. So yeah, if someone asks me how to make a fat kick drum, the number one thing I say to them is that you have to use this plugin. So show me hands up who's used this plugin. Okay, good. Because this, I use this for all of my kick drums. Before this, there was an older plugin that kind of did the same thing. But yeah, we're making a kick drum out of the sine wave. And the first thing, when I load this plugin up, the first thing I do is I set the length here. And this is important because this is in milliseconds here, and 128 BPM, you got about 460 milliseconds is one beat. So this from here to here in time equals one beat at 128 BPM. But this plugin is funny because this time over here isn't a linear scale. So at this point isn't halfway in time. So you'd think like if this is 430, this would be 220 here, but it's not. 220 is somewhere about here. This isn't a linear scale. I don't know why they didn't make it like that. It's fucking stupid. But the first thing you do when you open up this plugin, or first thing I do, is I set how long my kick drum is going to be. And so if it's going to be like big room, you take it all the way out here. It's going to be like a big long kick. If it's going to be banging electro house like this, I take it in a bit, somewhere between here and here. If you're making drum and bass or dubstep, you take it right in here and have a really short kick drum. So another thing that I'll do, and the thing that I did on this track Invader, is I will make a copy of this patch for the intro, and I will make a shorter version only for the intro, like this, because when you're playing intro of your track, you don't want the full-on kick, you know, you want to save that for the drop. So make it just the same copy of the patch, just make a shorter version for the intro, a longer version for the drop. And I think you can hear the difference in those. I think I've got them in here somewhere. Ooh, let's solo that. So that would be on the intro, and a bigger one on the drop. Yeah, bang, bang, bang. So once I've set the length of the kick drum, then I go to set the frequency, the pitch, the curve, and the pitch it ends on. And the main reason why I have to use this plugin is because you can set the note of the kick drum, the final note, to be in tune with your track, which is amazing. Like I'm like a sucker for this kind of thing. So yeah, problem is sometimes you set the frequency to the key of your track. This is in E, and then you listen to this kick drum with your track and you're like, man, it sounds too like deep, or it sounds too high, or something like this. So if you do this, then what I do is I set the note of the kick drum to be a fifth above or below. So you forgive me, I'm going to switch between live and Bitwig because I've been using the two different sequences recently. But I have another kick drum here, and this track was in the key of D, but with this kick drum I tuned it to a D, and it just sounded wrong. So what I did was I tuned it to A and then put a little pitch down to D, and then it just like it made it punch through more, because I think with your sub range, the lowest you can go is E, and if you go any below E in your subwoofer range, then it's gonna be too low even for the subwoofer system in the club to really handle. So yeah. So once you've set the low pitch of the kick drum, then you want to spend some time on the curve here, and this is where I spend a lot of time. Like seriously, I sit there in my studio and I listening to the kick drum and I adjust this curve like little bits. Is it sounding right or not? And I really I advise you to spend a lot of time with this. But some quick pointers on how to get this curve sounding good. When you want a heavy kick drum, like I played you in the Invader track, generally you want to start from up high, and you don't want the decay to be too long. So I generally take it about halfway along the graph here, and then I play just with this curve here, and that generally gives you like a really punchy fat kick for a hard tune like Invader. Go back to here. That's a very hard kick. When you want to do something like house music, like a more sort of bass house kind of kick drum, I've got one in this track here. So it's a more of a house feel, and what really gives like house, what tells you that it's a house track is this decay on the kick drum is a lot longer. I've got that kick drum in here. Oh, yeah, that's the kick drum from the house track there, and you can see the decay is way longer, and that's one of the things that tells you that it's like a house kick drum. So yeah, and then obviously I just showed you another kick drum there where I'd really gone to town on the curve in this one as well. This is one, like I said, where I just sat there for a long time and I tried playing with adding points and taking them away, and eventually came with this one, and it sounded real good. So I advise you spend a good amount of time like getting this curve right for the track, and it's going to be different for every track you do. So yeah, once I've got the curve in there, the next thing with the sub kick I have to decide is do I want from the sub kick, do I want the initial attack of it, or do I want to use another sample, and then do I only want the kick to just play the very sub frequencies? And generally for a harder kick drum, what I'll do is I'll use a sample and maybe not even take off any of the sub frequencies, but just have a really short envelope on it, and then I will only use this for the very sub frequencies. But if it's a more house style kick drum, I'll just use a sample just for the very top frequencies, and then I want to use this decay because it sounds nice and punchy. So we go back to this kick drum here from the Invader track. So what I've done with this one is I've taken off quite a lot of the attack of this kick drum, and if I mute that, you can hear like this. That's just what I'm playing there. It's just the top layer, and you can still hear there's a lot of sub and punch in that, because I found a sample that really kicked through in that little initial sort of low mid range, and I just wanted this to play the very bottom end. So if you look at the EQ that's going on after this kick drum, you see I've cut off so much of it there. So I think the next thing you need to decide with the kick drum is, do you want to do that? Do you want to use a sample to create the initial sub frequencies and then just use this for the very low sub frequencies, or as with this kick drum, that's the top sample I've used there. So most of the sort of low mid thump right in the start of the kick drum is still coming from this. It's kind of, it gives it, I don't know, this sounds like more of a psytrance kind of style, but it works really well in house music as well if you use this initial part of the curve from the kick here. I have actually in the past as well combined 2 instances of kick. When this Ableton being slow. So yeah, here's another kick drum where I have combined 2 instances of this. One is doing the very low and then one is doing the initial thump. I just thought, you know, I really went to town on it. So that's what this kick drum is sounding like. And this is coming from the top instance of kick here, and then I've got another instance of kick doing the real low bass as well, and I just played about mixing them together, mix them with a high pass sample as well, and it came out sounding really fat. So another way to get fat kick drums is possibly to use 2 instances of this. Basically the top instance to get the initial thump is just using instead of a sample. The other thing I like about this plugin is it's got the drive and the distortion in it, which normally I use a little bit of. If I use the distortion, I'll only maximum turn it up to here, not too much, because otherwise it sort of makes it sound real muddy and drives it too much. But you want to add a little bit of drive to your kicks, I think, because, you know, when you're listening on a sound system that doesn't have a massive subwoofer attached, it gives you a sense of the bass of the kick drum without actually hearing it, because it generates overtones. But another little cool trick that I can show you to do on the sub bass kick drum is on this one here. I've got the instance of kick, and then I don't know if you've come across Max for Live, but it's got these cool little modulation devices, and I've got an LFO tool running, sorry, not an LFO tool, just an LFO running on this kick, and you can see the shape of the LFO there. And then I've mapped that in isotope trash. It's just running through, this is a really gentle distortion curve here. It's from the saturate menu. How many people have used trash? Because this is the plugin that you need to be using if you're making bass music. It's fucking great. But when you go in here anyway, all the curves in the saturate menu are generally softer curves. And when you go in there, if you can adjust this curve here, and if you pull this right down, it just makes it a really soft saturation, but it still adds some coloration. So I've put that on the kick drum, but then I've assigned the LFO to the mix of this saturation so that it just adds some harmonics at the start of the kick drum and then fades them out again. So that's another, and that's just on the sub bass of the kick drum doing that. So that's essentially quite a long tip, but my first tip for kick drums is to use a plugin for the sub bass of the kick drum, because that will get you fat kick drums. I guess most of you sort of layer up your kick drums, I'm guessing, which is what I do. I tend to pick out a whole bunch of kick drums and load them into battery or load them into the Ableton drum rack. These days I tend to use battery. load up a bunch of kick drums in here, and then I can, you know, if I get to the end of the track, I'm not happy with the sound of the kick drum, it's really easy just to change the note and, you know, just pick another one. And so normally on the top end only of the kick drum, on the top sample, I don't tend to do too much processing, but one of my favorites is this plugin, and I like this transient shaper in particular because this drive here basically it clips the sound, and for the you know, the initial top attack of the kick drum, this is what you really want. You know, you want to drive the sound, clip it a bit, because it's a very short transient sound. Your ears can take a bit of clipping. You know, it's not going to sound horrible, and then you can adjust the attack and release times if you want. But the main reason is to turn up this drive knob probably to about that position, about 11 o'clock, because then you can just push up the level of the top kick drum without it, you know, peaking through your limiter. So I can probably show you on the channel output. Oh, if you take this plugin off, it's not going to show it there because it's going through some other processing. But yeah, this plugin basically with the clipping allows you to increase the level of the transient of the kick drum without clipping the limiter and busting your eardrums. The third tip I want to say about making better kick drums is that it's, as well as the top kick and the sub kick, it's nice to have some extra noises in there. I did a remix a while back. This one was for Zomboy. I don't know if you can hear it, but what I've done with this kick drum is that I've added some little samples which come just before the kick drum and sort of reverse into it, and I've actually layered up 3 of them. So here they are. Random little samples that I found. Later on in the track, I do slightly longer ones into the kicks where there's a snare drum. But this just, like, even very low volume just gives like the kick like drum like it's sounding like it's thumping a bit more. I don't know, just like sucking into the kick drum. I definitely advise trying to, you know, play with just little noises reversing into your kick drum. And so ever since I've done this Zomboy remix, I've used either 1 or 2 or all of these samples reversing into all my kick drums because they just sound cool, like even at a very low level. So I think if you listen to something newer, these same noises that are reversing into the kick drum on this track as well. And another way of getting extra noises in your kick drum, I've done this one on here, is to add a little reverb on there. And so this one I've just created an Ableton rack, and there's a dry channel there, and then on the effects channel when it loads up, what I've done is I've put this EQ before the reverb, and I've sort of done a very sharp boost here because it kind of creates almost like a cool little resonant hi-hat sound. So I've obviously chopped off all the low end before it goes to the reverb as well, because we don't want a big boom or anything like that. We just want a cool little sound at the top. So on its own, it's not playing anything. Maybe I take the gate off. So it's just playing with that on its own, but with a kick drum. Really adds a nice little tone to the kick drum, and I think, you know, that EQ peak is a lot of the part of that tone, and like you could probably change the tone of your kick drum to fit with your track by just changing the frequency of this boost here. So that's pretty much how I get my kick drums sounding all nice and fat.